I will show you my expertise that I gained for 11 years of teaching ACCA, and also as a member of Gold Approved ACCA Learning Partner. I get access to ACCA's feedback, to Tutor's conference, so I have a little bit of insight, which ChatGPT doesn't. Why people fail? Well, there are actually several reasons for that. 5 to be exact. First of all, time management problems. That is actually a major topic for discussion, and I've had a webinar that was an hour long where I would show why you have time management problems if you have multiple choice questions, if you have discursive questions, and so on. But the main idea is that you have time management problems when your exam technique is poor. So you write many sentences, but only a few of them score marks. Think about it as a net. Imagine that you want to catch fish and you caught lots of fishes, you got many sentences there, but if your net is not good, if you have huge holes in it, then fishes will just fall out. And the same happens with your marks. You may have lots of sentences, but only a few of them stay as mark earning. Quite often people answer the wrong question. And no, it's not about the verb. I know that when you're going to open LinkedIn, Reddit, or whatever, they are going to tell you, oh, there is a verb, evaluate, comment, and so on. It is important, but not as much. There are other themes that people tend to miss in questions, and we're going to cover them a little bit later. Quite often, people actually tend to answer the wrong exam. Consider this. If you are studying to be a medical student and you want to become a cardiologist, and you go to the exam and the question is why a person's head hurts, you need to talk about blood pressure, something that is heart related. You don't talk about their stamina or about cavity or whatever, right? The same idea is in here. So let's say if we're talking about SBR exam, strategic business reporting, it is about why and not so much about what. So if you just say debit credit, you don't get marks. Funny thing, if it is advanced performance management exam, APM, then this is about management, and the strategy, the vision, the mission, they're already there. They have been derived by a person who takes the SBL exam. So if you say should, chances are you are not scoring marks because you are answering the wrong exam. Quite often people answer in a way that is not mark efficient, which I've already talked to you about, and I will give you a few examples later, and they panic. When you hear this inner dialogue all the way through the exam, you just can't concentrate and you get worse results. And I have a fantastic technique for it. Make sure that you subscribe to my Instagram or LinkedIn because I share those posts on techniques. But let's start with the most important question. What was your score? Because it actually can indicate quite a lot. When I talk to people who come to me after resits, I ask them what their previous score was, how they prepared, and I usually have 3 brackets. Below 34, 35 to 44 marks, 45 to 49 marks. If a person has 45 to 49 marks, this means that most likely they are okay with the syllabus, so they know the major provisions of it, but they write ideas in a way that doesn't earn marks, so not mark efficient. And I will give you a few examples. Rhetorical questions. If you have a question that sounds a little bit like a journalism, like why would a company decide to move to zero-based budgeting if it means extra costs? This is 0 mark because there is no logical argument in here. And your brain thinks that you wrote quite enough because you have so many sentences, but there are no logical marks, right? Several reasons type of answers. So quite often people say, the comparison of financial data of lowly with the same data is not enough to successfully manage the organization because of the several reasons. There is no logical component in here. And this huge sentence that is almost 3 lines could have substituted with just, let's say, financial like benchmarking against own data is not enough. And then you would have your ideas. So by writing too much, by giving ideas that don't score marks, you lose time and you have time management problems, and your brain thinks that you have enough and you don't have enough, so you stop writing when it's too early.
Have you made sure that you subscribe to this channel? Do it now.
Other things that make people score 45, 49 marks are, you use the word and, or even worse, or. Look, the idea is that you cannot explain salad with a salad. So let me give you an example from like plain life. This salad contains tomatoes and chicken, so it's good for your health as it's rich in protein. In this very example, we have the word and. right? It has tomatoes and chicken. And the sentence sounds nice, but it doesn't score marks because you are saying that because it has both tomatoes and chicken, it is good for your health because it's rich in protein. But tomatoes aren't. They're not rich in protein, only chicken is. So by formulating your idea in this way, you lose marks because it becomes wrong. Sometimes it is not wrong, but you give 2 ideas just for 1 mark, because a marker will not give you 2-3 marks for just a tiny sentence. Each and every proposition has to be justified separately. Now, you also don't use the scenario. Here is the thing. ACCA wants you to be professionals who are valued. So this means that if you just give them an extract from Wikipedia, it's no use. You actually need to go to the company and say, look, company, you have this means that. You have this means that. So you actually need to copy-paste the scenario and talk about. And sometimes we make statements without explaining them. Revenue increased by 10%, which is good. Why is it good? We don't know, right? And all of that can be adjusted. And the best way, there are several ways how you can do that. You can start by reading examiner's report, and that is what I would do if I would be on a budget, so I wanted to self-study, because the examiner's report highlights main problems, and maybe you will find your technique in there shown to be poor ones and examples that you have made. So make sure that you attempt a question, then go to examiner's report, read what was wrong with all the students, and think about whether it's your case or not. And of course, it's going to take time, but it will just fix your road and you're going to be moving to the right direction. Or you can take tutor's help, and it's absolutely fine. Like with the exercise, with the gym, you can go to gym 3 times a week and not have any results because your technique is poor. And you can pay your coach and they will fix something and it will be much better. The same idea is in here. So you can ask for one-to-one classes.
Oh my! This SBR Made Easy podcast is fantastic because it's not just about the theory, it is about the application. And if that is what you get for free, just imagine how fantastic the course is. Enroll to pass the upcoming session. Let's continue watching.
Different approach happens when you have 35 to 44 marks, because most likely you misread the questions. So, for example, you ignore part of the question. And here is an example. Analyze the attractiveness of the acquisition of Franco from a financial and non-financial perspective. We have 15 marks in here, but our question is broken down in 2 parts, financial and non-financial. So this means that those 15 marks will be allocated more or less equally. So maybe not more than 8 marks for financial, not more than 8 marks for non-financial. Sometimes they allow you to have your answer be a little bit shifted, so it could be up to 9, not more than 15 in total. So the idea is that if you just going to talk about financial aspects, then you won't score more than 9 marks tops. You won't attempt more than 9 marks, and some of your answers, some of your sentences would not be good, so you will not score marks there, and you won't be able to get the 50% of 15 marks. Also, quite often people misinterpret the verb, and here is an example. Calculate NPV and briefly comment on the disadvantages of the method. Calculate means that you don't need to provide numbers, you don't need to talk about. So you don't spend your time, such don't overstate this question and don't put yourself at risk of not attempting the question that you leave for last. Briefly comment means that you're going to get 1 to 2 marks in here. So again, you would need to just write 2 ideas, not 5, not to overstate the question. And also, we were asked to talk about disadvantages only, so if you're going to talk about anything that is good, like knowledge's time value of money, 0 marks. And that is why people score 35 to 44 marks. And again, if you want to fix that, then what you would need to do, you would need to make sure that you read your question properly. So you need to pay attention to the keywords. So for example, in APM exam, a problem that people have, and this is why they don't score good marks in question 1, which is quite typical, is that they don't read tiny words. Discuss the impact of the introduction of just-in-time on the company's performance measurement and performance. So these 2 sentences differ with just 1 word, but the answer is going to be very different. The second question would ask you to talk about revenue has increased, costs have decreased, time has increased, quality have decreased, and so on. The first question about performance measurement would ask you to talk about the type of measures, not only individual but also group ones, not only annual but more frequent, and so on. And if you would talk about revenue increased, cost decreased, and the question would be the first one, you would just not get marks, and that's why your total mark would be low. How do we deal with that? Well, if you want to self-study, then you open the question, you open the answer, and you actually try to highlight the points that score marks and make sure that you interpreted the question correctly. You read examiner's report to see when people misinterpret it, or you get a tutor who's going to do that for you. Then we have the third group, below 34 marks. And this means that people don't understand the theory. There could be different reasons. It could be because it's too overwhelming for them. And we are different. So some people have learning problems. So they may have ADHD, they may have dyslexia, and so on. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. If you have some learning deficiencies, I would remind you that you can get an extra hour for ACCA. And I have students who would take 4 hours in their examination, which is great, 4 and 15, something like that. So use this opportunity. But also you may use help. So you may use help by means of a tutor who's going to just break down the information in a way that your brain can perceive. Or you can take a course that is visualized so that you imprint on theory better. So you don't understand the theory and it's perfectly fine. We don't understand each other even with plain English. So I ask my husband to go to the store and he comes back to me and he brings something else and I'm like, how could you get that from that ask? The same idea is in here, but harder, because in here you actually have professional language, which is a little bit harder for you to interpret. So the solution would be, you need to practice on questions that show how answer changes when just one of the word changes. For example, the key of retakes is performance management exam, PM. I have many clients who come for individual classes, and what I do, I show them the sentence and I say, okay, this word can change. For example, if we're talking about relevant costing for labor and the project could be delayed and it can be cancelled. If the other project is cancelled, we add the contribution to the relevant cost. If it is delayed, we don't touch that contribution, and so on. It's going to be especially important for the performance management exam. A little bit less important for financial management exam. And how can you do that? Well, again, if you have a tutor, if you don't, well, you can try to interrogate ChatGPT at least. It won't give you the full scope, of course, because its knowledge is limited, because there is not so much in the open access for ACCA skills, but still it's going to be a start. Another thing is that you need to use clear one step at a time workflows. So for example, with the financial management exam, it's quite overwhelming because there is a lot. And what I do, I have worksheets for each and every topic, let's say weighted average cost of capital. And then we have different types of costs there, like irredeemable debt, redeemable debt, and so on. And I put there the paths from the scenario that could happen, like let's say when the redemption is going to happen, what would be the redemption value, and we take those chunks and we try to calculate things. And this allows us to apply the methodics that is called scaffolding. So this means that we learn on those bricks and we learn how to identify them in the scenario, and it makes our job much easier. The same would happen for advanced financial management exam and let's say hedging, which usually blows people's mind. We put that into clear workflows and it actually becomes quite memorable. So make the workflows for yourself. Another problem is study the theory from the perspective when the rule applies and when it doesn't. Another solution would be. This is especially important for SBR. Look, when you're going to read IFRS standards, they're going to be read as fairy tales. Revenue, 5 steps. Step 1, identify the contract. Am I stupid not to identify the contract? And then you realize that there are so many questions that can be built around. So it means that you need to read the provision that is there and think about when it works and when it doesn't work. So for example, consideration is supposed to be probable. This means that if, let's say, we sign a contract and at the point of dispatch, we know that the customer won't pay because they have financial difficulties, we don't recognize revenue, we don't recognize allowance for it. And if we didn't know that they had problems and the problems appeared after the dispatch, then revenue stays there, but we would recognize allowance for receivables. So that is what you need to do. Sorry to interrupt. If you're taking SBR exam, make sure that you visit my website because we are going to have a webinar on the exam techniques that work there. So let's continue. If you don't have the access to good course, what you can do, you can just feed that to ChatGPT and ask it to give you examples when it doesn't work. And please do that for each and every definition, for each and every little part of the definition. It will take time because it takes time to interrogate it, to read the answer, to switch the question and so on, but it will allow you to memorize the content better. A few more tips. Many people say, should I go for administrative review? But administrative review is not a remark. Don't waste your hopes, time and money. Why? Well, because you should only consider it when your attendance status or result record appears wrong. I read about a person once, and that person shared a screenshot, and they got 0 marks for their AA exam. And if they attended, there is no chance that they would get 0 because they would get at least something right. So there is something wrong. And in this case, you need to apply for administrative review. And we had people last year who realized, who got message from ACCA that the PM exam was recalculated, so probably somebody applied for administrative review and something happened. But on a normal day, it's no use for you. It's not a remark. Nobody is going to reassess your thoughts. What you need to do is run your exam autopsy. So you need to think about how many sub-questions left unattempted. Frankly speaking, you need to make a note of it as soon as you finish the exam, but I do know that by that time you don't want to do that. Why? Because when we're talking about marks, we need to understand whether you got, let's say, 45 marks out of 60 marks that you attempted, and there is one way to get you ready, or whether you got 45 marks out of 100 that you attempted, because this means that problems are different. Think about which topics you skipped. And I would warn you, please don't focus only on those topics that felt confusing to you, because time has passed. And it could be that whatever was great will be forgotten and you will not focus. And this means that by the time you go to the next session, your strong areas will not be covered by you and you will lose marks there. And it will be so daunting. Which areas gave you the most trouble? So whether you struggle with the numbers, calculations, or with the discursive. If you struggle with calculations, then one step at a time. So try to break down a question into chunks. So literally use Excel table to write parts of the scenario. Okay, so I have a risk-free rate, this is it. I have beta asset, this is that, and so on. And how do I link that? If you have discursive question problems, I have lots of posts on this technique, or you can schedule one-on-one classes and we are going to fix that. Make a plan. So you should decide whether you are going to sit the upcoming sitting or defer to the next one. If your result was below 34, maybe you should consider skipping this sitting and going for the next one, because it means that you have quite a lot of material to cover. And if you are self-studying especially, you may not have enough time. If you feel that you can devote the time, if your mark is higher, or if you have tutor support, you can schedule your resit for the upcoming sitting. Frankly speaking, when people contact me, I tell them, well, don't skip the session because your knowledge will evaporate. Let's study 2 times a week. We can fit 10 classes and we can make you pass. Most likely you can. Don't plan anything for the exam week, and ideally 1 week before the exam week, because you're an adult and things happen. So I had a client and his parents got robbed, so he had to deal with that. He had to help them to buy new phones and reinstate the number and so on. I have people who had, let's say, their kids sick. And well, nothing serious, right? But still you have to attend your child and it takes time. So leave those 2 weeks ideally, don't plan. But you do need to create a plan, and please make sure that you create week and topics that you're going to cover. Don't study without a plan, because what can happen is that 3 weeks before the exam, when it's too late already, you will realize that it's so much to cover. Get help if you can. So consider buying a revision course, or maybe course from scratch. Consider getting a tutor. It is cost, I do understand it, but resitting exams is also the cost. It's your attendance fee, right? And it's the time of your career when you can't progress, when you are weaker in terms of HR and resume. So you lose your working money, right? And when you plan, make sure that you don't reschedule. So let's say if we're talking about SBR and we know that this week was planned for non-current assets and you were not able to do anything, don't start the next week with the non-current assets. Skip it, park it, and go to the next topic like revenue, and cover non-current assets when you have time. So make sure that you have this time. Because if you are going to reschedule, your brain will not think of it as a punishment. Your brain will think that it's okay. And before you know, you are going to spend 5 weeks covering what I was supposed to be covered within 1 or 2 weeks only. So never reschedule. Like 1 week, those topics, the week has passed, well, sorry, the topics are gone already. Do timed practice questions at least twice a week. Don't pile everything on weekend. Make sure that you have a starting day during the week. It's like with the gym. If you don't go there once a month, no use. And you need to use time practice, so consider 2 minutes per mark, not 1.8, just 2 minutes is okay, and stop. Because you also need to understand which battles to fight. And this time practice will teach you to understand which marks to attend or not attend. It will improve your time management technique and ultimately the way that you formulate your ideas. Log your mistakes, especially when we're talking about multiple choice questions, those silly mistakes. Make sure that you leave marks. And remember, a failed attempt does not prove that you're incapable. It does not mean that you're a bad person. It just means that the previous preparation system did not deliver 50 marks on that day. So much could have happened on that day. You could have been in bad mood. You could have had family problems, whatever. Things happen, even with the best of us. And your preparation system could have been a little bit off. I've got so many clients that would come to me after 4 resits only to realize that their exam technique was wrong, only to realize that they misinterpreted the exam, especially for PM and IPM and SBR exams. So if you have money and you can afford it, try to get help. So like you make one-on-one tuition classes, and you can do that with me. So this is my website, you can schedule classes there, or buy a course, revision package, something with tutor's feedback, maybe when tutor marks your work, which would be the best, or at least feedback in chat. So my courses provide all of that, so that you could change your technique, so that somebody would visualize what you are doing wrong. Because that's how with the gym, like you can't see that you are doing this technique, that your technique is wrong. You need a person who would come to you and say, okay, no, look, your arms are not in parallel, you're supposed to be like that and not like that. I have a free study group for SBR week, so you can access it and get sample of materials. I also have webinars on skills, like this is a screenshot when we had a webinar on time management. There are other webinars that are going to be run, so make sure that you visit it every once in a while. And I wish you the best. I really want everybody to pass, because I think that you made great effort to show up and to score that many marks as you scored. And you just need a little nudge to pass. So let this video be it. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you visit my website to register for webinars and for 1 week demo. And I will see you next. Bye.